Hello and welcome to my newest EDH deck tech. This week we are doing Wulfgar of Icewind. It is one of the new commanders from the Commander Precons accompanying Dungeons & Dragons Adventures of a Forgotten Realm. Before we get into the video, I would like to remind you to please comment, like, and subscribe on the video. Also, follow me on twitch.tv/Jarvis_Moonbeam, on Twitter and Instagram at Jarvis_Moonbeam, and you can join my Discord by following the link in the description of the video below. Wulfgar of Icewind is a 3 red and green human barbarian that has melee, and just to let you know what melee does, whenever this creature attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each opponent you attack to this combat. And it also has, if a creature you control attacking will cause a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Because of that, the majority of our deck is focused on attack triggers and attacking and being a red-green Gruul stompy aggro deck. So because of that, we're going to attack, and then we're going to attack some more. First card is Conduit of Storms. It's 2 and a red, that whenever it attacks, add 1 red mana to your mana pool at the beginning of your next main phase this turn. 3 and 2 red, you can transform it into Conduit of Emrakul. Whenever it attacks, you add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool at the beginning of your next main phase this turn. Hardened Berserker is 2 and a red, that whenever it attacks, next spell you cast this turn can cost 1 less to cast. Bangren Firstborn is 1 and 3 green, that whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on each attacking creature you control. Goreclaw Terror of Qualsisma is 3 and a green, that creature spells you cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 less to cast, and whenever it attacks, each creature you control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. Tectonic Giant, 2 and 2 red, that whenever it attacks becomes the target of a spell an opponent controls, choose 1. Either it deals 3 damage to each opponent, or you exile the top 2 cards of your library, choose one of them until the end of your next turn you may play that card. Elder Gargaroth, 3 and 2 green, Vigilance, Reach, and Trample, that whenever it attacks or blocks, you either create a 3/3 green beast creature token, gain 3 life, or draw a card. Goldspan Dragon is a 3 and 2 red, it has flying and haste, and whenever it attacks or becomes the target of a spell, create a treasure token, and all your treasure tokens can tap for 2 mana instead of the typical 1. Itali Primal Storm, 4 and 2 red, whenever it attacks, exile the top card of each player's library, then you may cast any number of spells from among those cards without paying their mana cost. Kogla the Titan Ape, 3 and 3 green, that whenever it enters the battlefield, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control, and then whenever it attacks, you destroy target artifact or enchantment defending player controls. And for 1 and a green, you can return a target human you control to its owner's hand, and it gains indestructible until end of turn. Savage Ventmaw is 4 a red and a green, has flying, and whenever it attacks, you add 3 red and 3 green mana to your mana pool, and until end of turn, you do not lose this mana as steps and phases end. Bane of Balaged, 7 generic mana, that whenever it attacks, defending player exiles 2 permanents he or she controls. Dracusek, Maw of Flames, 4 and 3 red, has flying, and whenever it attacks, it deals 4 damage to any target and 3 damage to each of up to 2 other targets. Cloth Unrivaled Ancient is 5 a red and a green, has flying and haste, and whenever it attacks, add X mana in any combination of colors, where X is the total power of attacking creatures. Spend this mana only to cast spells. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, 10 generic mana. When you cast this Ulamog, you exile 2 target permanents. It has indestructible, and whenever it attacks, defending player exiles the top 20 cards of his or her library. Asika's Chariot, 3 and a green. When it enters the battlefield, you create 2 2/2 green cat creature tokens, and whenever it attacks, create a token that's a copy of target token you control, and it costs 4 to crew it. Now, one of my favorite keywords in all of Magic is Annihilator. An Annihilator is an attack trigger, so we're going to annihilate them. We have Ulamog's Crusher, 8 generic mana with Annihilator 2, and it attacks each turn if able. Artisan of Kozilek, 9 generic. When you cast a spell, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it also has Annihilator too. Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, is 10 generic. When you cast it, you draw 4 cards, has Annihilator 4, and when it is put into a graveyard from anywhere, its owner shuffles his or her graveyard into their library. Pathrazer of Ulamog is 11 generic, Annihilator 3, and it can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. Ulamog the Infinite Gyre, 11 generic. When you cast it, you destroy target permanent, has Indestructible, Annihilator 4, and whenever it is put into a graveyard from anywhere, its owner shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library. It That Betrays is 12 generic, Annihilator 2, and whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent, put that card onto the battlefield under your control. Those are all the Eldrazi that have the Annihilator trigger that I was able to find in my quick research. Next category is ramp spells, card draw, and interaction. Destiny Spinner is 1 and a green. Creature and enchantment spells you control can't be countered, and for 3 and a green, target land you control becomes an XX elemental creature with trample and haste until end of turn, where X is the number of enchantments you control, and it's still a land. Dockside Extortionist is 1 and a red. And when it enters the battlefield, you create X treasure tokens where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. Vexing Cheshire. It is Gruul, so 2 red or green mana. It can't be countered, and for a Gruul, target spell can't be countered. Eternal Witness is 1 and 2 green. When it enters the battlefield, you may return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Reclamation Sage is 2 and a green. When it enters the battlefield, you destroy target artifact or enchantment. Anger is 3 and a red. It has haste as long as it's in your graveyard and you control a mountain. Creatures you control have haste. Beast Whisperer is 2 and 2 green. Whenever you cast a spell, draw a card. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you draw a card. Talski, Bearer of Secrets, is 3 and a green. Can't be countered, indestructible. Attacks each combat if able. Most importantly, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Xenagos, God of Rebels, 3 a red and a green, indestructible. As long as your devotion to red and green is less than 7, Xenagos isn't a creature. At the beginning of your combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste. It gets +X until end of turn, where X is that creature's power. Vandal Blast, a single red, or you can overload it for 4 and a red, and it's destroy target artifact you control, artifact you don't control, and for the overload cost, it's all artifacts you don't control. Veil of Summer is a single green. Draw a card if an opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn. Spells you control can't be countered this turn. You and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and from black until end of turn. Farseek is 1 and a green. Search your library for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain card. Put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. Heroic Intervention is 1 and a green. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Nature's Lore, 1 and a green. Search your library for a forest card. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle. 3 visits does the same thing as Nature's Lore. Balaged Recovery is 2 and a green. Return target card from your graveyard to your hand. And the flip side of it is a land in Balaged Sanctuary that comes in tapped and also taps for a green mana. Beast Within is 2 and a green. You destroy target permanent. Its control gets a 3/3 green beast creature token. Chaos Warp is 2 and a red. The owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library, then reveals the top card of their library. If the permanent card, they put it onto the battlefield. Cultivate for 2 and a green. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Reveal those cards, put 1 onto the battlefield tapped, and the other into your hand, then shuffle. Deflecting Swat for 2 and a red. If you control a commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost, and you may choose new targets for target spell or ability. Kodama's Reach, 2 and a green. It does the same thing as Cultivate. Crossing Grip for 2 and a green. It has split second, and you destroy target artifact or enchantment. Valakut Awakening is 2 and a red. You put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards +1. The back of it is Valakut Stone Forge. It enters the battlefield tapped, and it taps for a red mana. Force of Vigor is 2 and 2 green. If it's not your turn, you can exile a green card from your hand rather than pay the spell's mana cost. Destroy up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. Triumph of the Hordes is 2 and 2 green. Until end of turn, your creatures get +1/+1, gain trample and infect. Return of the Wild Speaker, 4 and a green. You choose one. Most often it will be the first one. Draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-human creatures you control. Or non-human creatures you control get +3/+3 until end of turn. Turn Timber Symbiosis, 4 and 3 green. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield. If that card has converted mana cost 3 or less, enters the battlefield with 3 additional +1/+1 counters. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. The back of this is Turn Timber Serpentine Wood. As it enters the battlefield, you may pay 3 life for it to enter untapped, and you could tap it for a green mana. Blasphemous Act is 8 and a red. Costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield, and it deals 13 damage to each creature. Lightning Greaves, 2 generic, creature has haste and shroud. Swiftfoot Boots, 2 generic, creature has hexproof and haste. Beastmaster Ascension, 2 and a green. Whenever a creature you control attacks, you may put a quest counter on Beastmaster Ascension. As long as it has 7 or more quest counters on it, creatures you control get +5/+5. Elemental Bond is 2 and a green. Whenever a creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Garruk's Uprising, 2 and a green. When it enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Creatures you control have trample, and whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Rhythm of the Wild, 1 a red and a green. Creatures spells you control can't be countered. Non-token creatures you control have Riot. Guardian Project, 3 and a green. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, draw a card. Now we're getting to our mana base. This includes mana dorks, artifacts, and lands. You have Birds of Paradise that taps for 1 mana of any color. Elvish Mystic that taps for a green mana. Llanowar Elves that taps for a green mana. Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Talisman of Impulse, which is the Golgari Talisman. Cursed Mirror, which is 2 and a red. It taps for red mana, but when it enters the battlefield, you may have it become a copy of any creature on the battlefield until end of turn, except it has haste. So, it's very possible you could copy a Dockside with this, and go to town and get so many treasures, or you could copy something that your opponent has that is broken as well. The Great Henge is 7 and 2 green. This spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Tap it for 2 green, you gain 2 life. And whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, it gets a +1/+1 counter, and you draw a card. The lands, you have Ancient Tomb, Command Tower, Craghound Pathway, which the backside of it is Timber Crown Pathway. Den of the Bugbear, which is the new manland from one of the new manlands from Dungeons and Dragons, that for 3 and a red until end of turn, it becomes a 3/2 red goblin creature with whenever this creature attacks, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. Exotic Orchard, Fabled Passage, Game Trail, Castle Garum Brig, Carplucin Forest, Lair of the Hydra, which is the green manland that for X and green it becomes a XX green Hydra creature, but X cannot be 0. Reliquary Tower, Rootbound Crag, Scavenger Grounds, Spire Garden, Stomping Ground, Cinderglade, Strip Mine, Temple of Abandon, and Yavimaya Cradle of Growth. We are also playing 8 forests and 8 mountains. In all, we are playing 35 regular lands and 3 MBFCs, so for a total of 38 lands. But let me know what you think of the deck. What spells would you change? What creatures would you change? Is there something that I did that you really liked that you didn't think of? Something I did that you were like, why are you even making that play? But until next time, yet again, like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one. See ya.